Speaking of the playoff game, do you think Lamar needs to reach the Super Bowl to silence all doubters?
He needs to win it, not just reach it. Win it. Yeah.
Okay.
He's won 2 MVPs. There's 10 other guys that have won MVPs, all quarterbacks except for Jim Brown. But every one of those 10 guys has won at least one Super Bowl. So that's the class you put yourself in. And so he has to not just reach a Super Bowl, win it. Like if he doesn't win a Super Bowl, he's going to finish his career. Yeah, he'll be a Hall of Famer because of the MVPs and the winning. But we will look at it with disappointment. But he never got that one ring. That'll help define his career, just like it does kind of Dan Marino's. Now, in fairness, even if he didn't have 2 MVPs, Coach, I think he'd still be, you got to win a Super Bowl because he's that good. And Wilds, you know, I made the S-Bob famous.
Of course.
For teams, for franchises. Here's the S-Bob quarterbacks, Coach. All right, look, there's 2 different categories. S-Bob quarterback, Super Bowl or bust because of their individual greatness.
This is just this year.
Well, this is going forward.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I guess this year. Mahomes, you know, obviously he's about winning Super Bowls. Lamar's got to win one. Allen's got to win one. Burrow's got to win one. The bottom next under that, these guys are approaching that. If they have the seasons this year that they had last year, or Herbert typically has, then they will become S-Bob quarterbacks, where it's like, okay, Jordan Love's so good now, he's got to win the Super Bowl. That's what we're going to judge him by, and the same for Stroud and Herbert. The other 3 on the bottom are because of their team's greatness. Not that they're not very good. Purdy, obviously, I like, but he's in an S-Bob situation.
Yeah. This shirt's a little weird. Graphic's a little weird because, you know, he said Purdy was like the MVP. That Purdy's, you know, ceiling is Drew Brees, and now he's not saying because of you know, in their greatness category. Like I believe in the top, you know, Lamar, Allen, Burrow, Mahomes. And I think Herbert should be up there or will be up there, but I understand why Stroud, Herbert, and Love are, you know, kind of brought down there if you want to do it in these levels things. But I'm confused why, you know, Brew has Purdy down there all the way. And then same thing with Hurts. You know, Hurts was an MVP candidate and balled out. Now, I get it because that roster for the Eagles is really good. And again, I know I've been talking highly about Hurts, but you know, make no mistake about it. I am not saying that Hurts is necessarily on Mahomes or Allen or Burrow's level, but you're not looking at there's just different levels of quarterbacking from my viewpoint where, you know, you see a Mahomes or like an Allen or a Burrow, and when they go up against some of these other quarterbacks, you're just like, they have the better quarterback. It is going to be brutal for you to win because of the better quarterback. You know, you're just going to be outcoached, outclassed, everything. That is not where Hurts is in. Again, Hurts has proven that not to be going up against the Patrick Mahomes. You know, that wasn't the difference maker. Patrick Mahomes versus Jalen Hurts wasn't the reason why the Chiefs won and the Eagles lost. So, and same thing with Burrow, obviously, versus, you know, Matthew Stafford. So, I mean, so that's where I put it. You could make the argument that Purdy didn't play good enough in the Super Bowl. I praise Purdy's composure in the playoffs. I gave him flowers for how he was able to step up against the Packers and then against the Detroit Lions. I've given him flowers, so do not take this as Purdy hate by no stretch of the imagination. But it can't, and I'm not saying that he's the reason why they lost the Super Bowl. I had my list, it's no longer here, of all the reasons why they lost, and none of them had anything to do with Purdy. With that said, if Purdy was just 10% better, was a 10% better quarterback, just that game in general, then they would have won. They would have been able, then he would have been able to overcome the Christian McCaffrey fumble, the fumble on the punt, you know, he would have been able to overcome that. And he couldn't. The margin was so small. They lost by 3. If it was just 10% better, a little bit better, you know, and that's the difference. And that was not why the Eagles lost, right? That's not why Joe Burrow and lost to Matthew Stafford, right? Like that's not why. Josh Allen, when he had the famous game against Patrick Mahomes, you know, in the 13 seconds, Josh Allen couldn't have been any better that game. But you could make arguments that why Dak lost in the playoffs, why even Jordan Love, although you give him grace because it was his first, you know, run at the playoffs, you know, if he played 10% better, then they would have beaten, you know, the 49ers. So I just think that Hurts belongs to be elevated for that reason. You're not going to go toe-to-toe against the Eagles, especially if it's two equal rosters, going head-to-head, or two relatively equal rosters. You're not just like, well, you listen, man, they have a huge deficit at quarterback. You're going to be able to take advantage of that. This isn't a Baker Mayfield situation or, I don't even know right now, just other random quarterbacks that are, I don't want to keep just saying Dak Prescott, because I think Dak Prescott's a pretty good quarterback, not great or amazing, but I don't think you're necessarily, if the Cowboys go up against the Chiefs and they lose, I'm not going to say that it's just because Dak Prescott, but it'll be for many reasons. And Dak will be one of them, but not the main linchpin of just like, well, you know what, you can't do it. So I just think that before we start judging Hurts too much, I just don't think it's very much fair that he had a down year, he was injured, and had a bad OC, a bad DC, a team that was filled with players that are retiring, that were on their last leg and just had nothing left in the tank, and we just dropped that all on Jalen. I just disagree with that personally.
Like, no, they've been to the Super Bowl even with Jimmy Garoppolo. So Purdy's got to win the Super Bowl. Dak, because he's with America's team, has to win the Super Bowl. And Hurts is kind of floating in between because maybe he is that great.
Oh, yeah,
maybe Purdy too. But
I paused it too
Hurts
soon,
has
sorry.
to win one because that team is built to win now. They got a lot of pieces.
I always love your stuff. I don't know if I love
You don't love this?
He's not an S-Bob guy.
Putting CJ Stroud there after
Well,
one year.
they're question marks. There's question marks.
Putting Jordan Love there after 1 year. I struggle with that. And then your boy Brock Purdy. After
But
all
he's not in a Super Bowl or bust situation.
No, I agree, but all the stats that you quote over and over again, he doesn't even make the second row.
Exactly,
Well, no,
that's
the
what I said.
I would be so happy with this graphic and this chart right now. I can't believe Purdy's there and Stroud and Love are up on that one.
It's more strength of the team.
Okay.
And again, the question marks are
Do I want
Don't
There are
ignore the
question
question marks, Coach.
If Goff is not is not S-Bob, is that good for him or is it problematic for him?
Is he
think
S5,
that-
Coach? Is he S5?
I would think if we're going to talk about the greatness of a team, Detroit's got a pretty talented team right now.
But I want to go back on Lamar because they barely really talked about Lamar, just very briefly. The reason why Lamar definitely needs a Super Bowl at this point, I think there would have been more grace given to Lamar if he played better in playoff games and that they just lost and they couldn't cut it. Then people would then be able to give similar excuses that I've kind of laid out for Josh Allen in the past or other players in the past of just saying like, this is the ultimate team sport. There's so many moving parts. What the heck does Lamar Jackson have to do about Patrick Mahomes going up against a defense, right? We always say Lamar versus, Mahomes. And it's like, that's not how it works. And so, but the truth is that Lamar has personally and individually coming up short in playoffs. And I've even given him grace in that regard and blamed other aspects, coaching, youth, all of that. And I still think that there is some truth to that. I'm still willing to give him some excuses, but eventually those excuses run out and eventually he needs to really ball out even if he loses. Like, that is one of the best things in a lot of ways is what Josh Allen has, is that even though he lost to Patrick Mahomes in that famous, 13-second game, he balled out. He did everything to put the Bills in a position to win. Lamar Jackson, you can't really say that. He really only had like one good playoff game, and it was against the Houston Texans, house money for them. No one was really expecting them to do anything except for Nick Wright, and which was an absurd take by him. So I just think that that's where some of this pressure comes on to Lamar. But truthfully, when they lost to the Chiefs, like, I didn't even really blame Lamar. Yes, Lamar definitely threw a terrible interception, but he had nothing to do with the taunting penalties. He had nothing to do with the fact that he then threw the ball and Flowers now decides to fumble the ball by reaching across or then also getting a taunting penalty. Those were boneheaded mistakes that absolutely could have changed the game and could have led to a victory for the Ravens, without a doubt. And the play calling was insane. If you remember, they averaged, I forget how many carries, like something like, I forget the number. I don't even want to say a number because I forget, but it was a lot. throughout the whole season. And then that game, they decided to only carry the ball like 6 times, like something outrageous, I mean, it was just absurd, insane. So it was awful play calling. And there was rumors that, it was, whether this is true or not, I have zero idea. So do not hold my feet to the fire for this one. But it's like an all black quarterback room. And they were saying that, that there was rumors that they wanted to prove that, that they're not going to win by running the ball that they're going to throw. And that's what they did. Again, I have no idea if that's true. Where I heard it was a reliable source, although he lately has been making some more outlandish claims these days. So I have no idea. I haven't heard anyone else really mention that because it's probably slightly, a divisive topic. But it was definitely bizarre that they decided to just not, run the ball, which is what they had been doing all season. And I know, Chiefs fans want to take credit for all of that and say, hey, it was all Spags in the defense. And that was part of it. It was not all of it. But yeah, I just think that if Lamar played really good that game against the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes' brilliance just, was able to take it away and win, then you would give him more grace. And people would say, hey, you know what? Lamar's just running into the juggernaut of, the Kansas City Chiefs. How can you blame him? Same thing with Josh Allen or Joe Burrow. It's like everyone's trying to get through Patrick Mahomes and they can't. So can we really fault these QBs for not being able to win? But it's the sheer fact that he hasn't played consistently well in the playoffs. And he's never really, truly balled out against a good team in a way where you're like, yes, I am Lamar. And I think that's where Lamar gets kind of pulled down. But as I said, I don't even 100% put that on Lamar. I don't think Baltimore put Lamar in a position to succeed specifically against the Kansas City Chiefs from the jump. That game felt like a miss from the Ravens, from the penalties to the play calling to just a little bit of everything. The defense held their own for the most part, of course, against Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, but the offense was I just couldn't make sense of it. So I don't necessarily put that all on Lamar, but you could feel the pressure building on Lamar. He's definitely going to sense it, and and even if the Ravens are the number 1 seed, right? If they win 14, 15 games next season, they have the number 1 seed, everyone's still going to doubt them. Everyone is still going to doubt them. Even the Ravens fans are going to be like, okay, that's great. Let's see you actually not, don't choke in the playoffs. Like, no one actually has that confidence. And once you kind of get that monkey on your back, it's pretty difficult to get off, quite honestly. Just look at the Dallas Cowboys. So, unfortunately, Lamar, I think, absolutely does really need to not only reach a Super Bowl, but win the Super Bowl. And honestly, it's because people see him as being so great. It's credit to him for being, for reaching a level where people are saying you are so good that if you don't win a Super Bowl or start performing in the playoffs, we have to reevaluate what is going on with you because we see your brilliance. We see how extraordinary you are. And, we compare you to Patrick Mahomes and in this conversation. And it's like, but if you can't even reach a Super Bowl or win a Super Bowl, then we have no choice but to say you are nowhere near Patrick Mahomes' level. This is not a Tom Brady, Peyton Manning. Like, Peyton Manning, for the most part, gets a lot of, grace for just not being necessarily on as good as teams as Tom Brady. But, again, for a while, people were not necessarily just saying, Peyton Manning is just nowhere near Tom Brady. But then Tom Brady just kept winning and winning and winning. And they're like, okay, Tom Brady's, the GOAT. But people are not saying that Peyton Manning is a scrub by no means. And I fear that Lamar Jackson could end up becoming more of a Michael Vick in a way. Honestly, I mean, obviously he's better than Michael Vick and more successful than Michael Vick. But I fear if he never really makes it to a Super Bowl or never truly wins or never really rights the ship where he's truly dependable in the playoffs, I fear that's what it'll end up being. He'll just be like, kind of like, oh, he was the next evolution of Michael Vick, really great, but wasn't a winner, couldn't handle it in the playoffs, could never win the Super Bowl. But those are just my thoughts. I would absolutely love to hear yours. Do you think Lamar needs to reach a Super Bowl to silence the critics? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment, so whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions, let's get in some fights, but ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and I would absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to, something that we're really excited to be part of, and I think we're well on our way to doing it. And please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help with the visibility and the algorithm. And it helps fight all the haters and the trolls. Thank you so much. See you next time.